some problems. So they have a little, the National Weather Service uses the phrase turn around, don't drown. So you should never drive through a flooded area. If you're, depending on where you are, if you're in a flood prone area, you might need to get higher if there's a flood warning that's coming your way. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. There are ways to check, and I'd be happy to share some links with people about flood warnings. But you can definitely see what area you're living in and whether or not this is something you need to take very seriously. But the one thing to remember is when driving in a flooded area, don't ever drive through the flooded areas, okay? So water on the road means don't go through it. Thunderstorms, severe thunderstorms, we talked about the types a little bit earlier. That's not an exhaustive list of types. It gets real nerdy, guys. I'm not kidding. There's some acronyms, there's some MISO things that come in. It gets weird, but I didn't include those. Thunderstorms can produce high winds, heavy rain, and hail. Wind and hail can be very dangerous, especially if the hail is large. So those are things to think about. In a thunderstorm, so especially if you are outside, you should always take shelter in a sturdy structure away from windows. So you will see when they have severe thunderstorm warnings come through, they will say things like seek shelter in a basement. That doesn't mean a tornado is going to happen. That just means that you're going to want to be inside, away from windows, because that wind and hail and that heavy rain, it could break windows if there's something debris flying around. It doesn't mean a tornado is imminent. Not every thunderstorm is going to produce a tornado. Sheltering in a car, if you're outside, is better than being outside. So that is something to think about if you're at the park or you're somewhere where you don't have a proper, like a house you can get to. Your car is better than nothing. In this storm picture, I took this actually at my house. Again, I'm a weather nerd. But this was a pretty nasty storm that came through, and we did have some hail from this storm, which I was not standing in. I don't go outside for every storm. I also go into the house when hail gets involved because it hurts more than anything. But there's some cool cloud structures that come from storms. Again, lightning from thunderstorms can be pretty dangerous. Lightning does kill an average of 30 people each year. Thunderstorms produce the lightning. It doesn't have to be a massive thunderstorm. It can be a very small thunderstorm, but it can have lightning. You should, again, be inside of a sturdy structure or a hard-topped vehicle. So convertibles aren't necessarily safe, but it's safer than nothing if that's all you have, but just a hard-topped vehicle is what they would recommend. So if you're hearing thunder, there's more than likely lightning. So you should take shelter indoors if at all possible, and if not, go to your vehicle. I promise the exciting one is coming. Here it is. It's exciting for me. Nobody else might not think that, but tornadoes. Tornadoes can reach up to 200 miles per hour. Flying debris is the biggest threat. And in a tornado, you should always seek shelter inside of the sturdiest possible building, away from windows, and cover your head. And every tornado is life-threatening. So don't ever think a tornado, it's just a small one, it's not a big deal. Those small storms can be pretty impactful. There are ways they measure tornadoes. I didn't add that information. I didn't want to get too nerdy. Like Andrew said, I could talk to you for hours about storms, but there's a scale they use, and even the smallest scale tornado can be up to 80-mile-per-hour winds. So those things are not something you want to mess with. So if there is a tornado warning in your area, you should go inside and you should go away from windows and seek shelter. And where do you go? Let's look at that. So if you're at your house, the worst places you can be would be your like a mobile home or a large open space. So like a gym. So think about the rec center. That is not a good option to go into if there was a tornado warning in our area. Better options would be basement or an interior room of a well-constructed home. So you don't, like, mobile homes are not something you should go to. If you have that option, I mean, you may not have any other options, but you want to do the best you can. I don't know anyone that has a FEMA safe room or a tornado storm shelter that's compliant with certain regulations. So most of us are going to be in this good option category over here, and we're mostly in our basement. So the things that you want to keep in mind is to go to the most interior part of it with no room. So if you do not have a basement, but you do have a small bathroom kind of towards the center of your house, that's where you would want to be. You would want to cover your head. you would want to make sure that you don't have any large objects nearby that might fall on you, because depending on how bad that storm is, you know, the wind can knock things over and around. Tornadoes are scary. I have seen 3 in my life. They're an interesting thing. They're kind of awe-inspiring in a lot of ways. When you watch even with the picture, it's like, wow, that's created there. But they are definitely something that should be taken seriously. So you don't want to go outside. You would want to go inside, and you'd want to take, you want to take shelter. We have a system in our house where we actually have dog leashes and a go spot where we would take our dogs downstairs. Of course, my kid would come first, but we have areas, we do things that are very specific to tornadoes. And as I said, my husband, if I ever say to him, get in the basement, he knows it's pretty serious. But if you ever have a tornado warning at your house, you should always get into the basement.
Hey Jess,
Yeah.
can you talk about like open rooms or gymnasiums? So what if you're in the rec center on campus? Where would you go? Or what about the student center? What are the best places? I know we always look sometimes at stairwells being the most secure location for some other types of problems, but
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
So you always want to go towards the middle. So in the student center, we do have the basement. I would go into the basement, and you'd want to avoid any areas that are large with glass. So we wouldn't want to go to the south end because of all the glass and that open window. We'd also want to avoid the game room area, only because there's the glass there. We have to assume that if a tornado hit any area, that it could break through into the basement. Just because we're in a basement doesn't mean we're absolutely safe. So we want to avoid anything that could cause harm. I would personally suggest the areas in the back of the house, because there's no windows back there. It's mostly concrete. It's more safer for our student center. I wouldn't stay in the main corridor, because if you think about a storm coming through that large window, the wind would then be in that hallway, which could cause some debris to fly around and cause some injury. In the rec center, it's a little more difficult. There is a basement in the rec center, and there are some interior rooms down there. If at all possible, you'd want to go as low as possible. So you'd want to go into the basement if you could. If you couldn't in the rec center, you might look at some of the locker rooms. You're looking for windowless or glassless areas. Even though there's some mirrors, those are going to do less damage than anything like a large window. If you're in any area that's more open, like a large open space, you just want to try to get as low as you can and towards the center as you can. And you want to avoid the potential for large flying objects. Sometimes we're not in our houses though, right? I've been driving home, and there's been tornado warning sirens going off. So some things to think about are where you can go and what you can do to be safe there. You do want to get off the road. You do want to try to go to a house or some kind of structure that's going to keep you safe. Is that a store? Whatever you have in your area. You see this on the shows, sometimes they talk about going under overpasses. That is not safe, and that will not protect you. So you definitely want to try to get into an area. You don't want to drive onto a bridge for sure, and you don't want to stay under an overpass. Those are 2 things that they provide, like the overpass provides some false hope, like, oh well, the tornado is going to run right through that. The wind, again, the biggest threat in a tornado is flying debris. So anywhere that wind can get into, this whole open area underneath that bridge, that's where you're going to want to avoid. And that's going to create almost like a wind tunnel. It's kind of like walking like from the student center to parking structure 5 when it's really windy out. You don't want to help tunnel that wind in any way. So you want to get off the road. You want to get to any place you can with shelter, whatever that looks like in the area you're in. Any other questions about the tornadoes? Anything like that? No? Nothing in the chat? Perfect. Then we're going to move on. So here's some resources. I know that like the local weather stations, there's millions, there's like thousands of them, local weather stations and websites you can go to. The website that I always go to is the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service does provide all warnings and watches. They actually issue them. So it's pretty up to date. It's going to actually usually hit before your local television station does. The Storm Prediction Center, so that picture I showed of the risk that we had that day on June 10th, that came from the Storm Prediction Center. That's a really cool website that kind of shows you what the weather is going to be like in the next few days. I will tell you, I think it's Saturday. We do have some marginal risk for severe weather here in the state of Michigan, but there's some graphs and some infographics on what does that mean. So is it just going to be a water event, like lots of rain, or is it going to be like a torcon, the tornado probability scale of what that could look like? I will say on June 10th, we were at a torcon of 5, which is pretty high out of 10. So that's something that people got a little excited about. But this website, the Storm Prediction Center, gives all of that information out so you can look ahead. So if you're planning something that you're going to be outdoors all day for, it's a little bit more predictive than just going to like weather.com. The National Weather Service Skywarn Storm Spotter program, which I think all of you should do because it's amazing and awesome. They're going to talk to you for like 2 hours as opposed to my 30-ish minutes. But that you go through a training program where it teaches you a lot more about storms than I did today, talks a little bit about what they want to see and what you report. I call the Weather Service probably, I don't know, 20 times a year, because we're not just reporting on tornadoes, we're reporting on rainfall totals, reporting on wind speeds, things of that nature. You do report on things like rotation. A really cool fact about that is tornado warnings that are issued have to have 2 sources. They can be radar indicated, so the radar can show some rotation in the storm, the clouds, but they also look for a spotter to confirm that there's rotation. So they teach you a little bit what that looks like. False tornadoes, there's some scud clouds that looks a lot like a tornado when it's on the ground. So that's a really cool free program. You can do it online right now. You can do it online every year. And it walks you through all of that. And then you can do some more advanced things after that. The other place is the Weather Channel. They have a really good reporting structure as well. If you have to pick a local station, my favorite right now is Channel 2, but everyone's going to have their own favorites. I did not include that as a resource. So now that you have this knowledge, what do you do with it, right? There are weather apps out there that you can download. They're some of my favorites. There's that website there has a whole list of apps that are out there that are hopefully more current. There are some older ones that aren't as great. My favorite is Storm Radar by the Weather Channel. It has some predictive technology that's really cool. You will see warnings and watches come on that app as well. NOAA Weather Radar Live is also really awesome if you like radars. They do show the warnings and watches as well. Tornado by American Red Cross is one that's favored by people just specifically for tornado warnings. So if you live in a tornado prone area, that might be the one app you want, but it doesn't give you a lot of information about everything else that's coming. A weather alert radio, they're about $30. They're super easy to set up, and they will provide very, very, very loud warnings to your entire house if there's a severe weather event coming your way that means that you need to take shelter. Someone have a question? Nope. Okay. That's a great segue there because this is the question spot. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you own a weather radio?
I do. I have 2 actually. I have a wireless one that's more portable, and I have one that's wired. Any other questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned that trees can get uprooted.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's a tornado warning, in terms of like if you have a plant outside growing, like what is there something you should do?
You wouldn't necessarily want, you can't help the plants in any way, so the plants are just there. If there's a large tree on a certain side of your house and you don't have a basement, you might want to seek shelter away from that large tree. Wind, it's really weird, like there's a whole formula for that, but trees become uprooted. Usually there's 2 factors. One is the amount of rain, so is the ground soaked, and then how heavy is the wind, and it's going to depend on the size of the tree. I have trees that surround my house. That's something I've also thought about. Like, I'm weird, so I'm gonna put that out there. But I have a spot in my basement I would go to very specifically that factors in the large tree locations. So that's something you might want to consider if you have one side of your house that has a large tree. you might want to avoid that side of the house, as long as there's no other factors that would prohibit you staying on the opposite side. So if you have a full glass plate window and a tree, I would choose the tree other than the glass window. It just depends. Any other questions? Oh, I didn't share the slide that just says that we also have an opportunity for any announcements or updates from Andrea. Sorry, I stopped share too early.
Ooh. It's all good. No, well, thank you, Jessica, for sharing some of your expertise around weather. I think it was really timely when we were looking at topics. We had just had that big storm. Several of us on the leadership team were without power. I know I was without power. And so we thought that it would be pretty helpful just to hear some of that information so you guys know that. I know like in elementary school and stuff, you all do the tornado warnings and drills, but the reality is we don't really refresh ourselves on these things and we don't really know a ton about it. So thank you, Jess, for sharing your expertise. There isn't a ton of updates, to be honest, right now. We're really in this holding pattern and we're trying to, we have prepped a lot of reopening stuff. Oh, what is this? So Jessica is now playing on cartoons, I see. No, so we have prepped a whole bunch.
No, what I see is Bilal is now playing on cartoons.
Gotcha. But Jessica is a cartoon. She's pointing that way for the storm. But we've prepped all these things and it's at our leadership. So it's at the president, the provost, the restart committee with all of our medical advisors on campus. And we're really just waiting to hear from them. They did have a meeting today, and then there'll be a Board of Governors meeting tomorrow of what we are able to do when we're able to do certain things. I am not super helpful that they're going to get as nitty gritty as we need them to, of exactly when we're going to open the door, how many events are we allowed to have, what does it look like between events, what is it like for our staff, what exactly do we have to sanitize, how are we going to sanitize these things. I mean, these are all things that we have been working on as a team for you. So we're developing kind of a playbook. We were working on it this morning of what is the responsibility of our customers and students and staff who are in the building. What is the responsibility of us as a facility? What is the responsibility of an event planner or a group that's having an event? So those are the things that we are working on right now, trying to make sure that we're ready when we are able to open those doors. We do actually have customers who are wanting events. I know I was talking to Megan this morning that there are several customers that she has that would like to have events very soon. So as soon as we can get the go ahead to get up and running, we're gonna do our darndest to make sure we are ready for that day. So is there any questions that you guys have about the restart committees? Anything that is on your mind about restarting the building that you want us to consider? You guys are so talkative. Nothing? All right. Well, I will leave you with that then. Hopefully next week we will have some more updates from those meetings. The Board of Governors meeting is tomorrow. So if you guys are interested in that, you can tune in and watch it live. And we can kind of see if anything pertains to us, but it all pertains to you guys as students. So be involved and be in the know. So, all right, I will leave you with that. You guys have a wonderful weekend. I do believe that there is a social tomorrow at 2:30. Is that the time? Okay, Anna, or do you guys want to talk about what you're doing before we leave? I put Anna on the spot, sorry.
I believe it's Lexi running it.
Oh, is
Yeah,
Lexi
Lexi is going to be in charge of it this week. I don't know what
Sorry,
she
Anna.
has in mind. No, it's all right. But 2:30, be here at 2:30 tomorrow for something awesome, I'm sure.
I think I'm pretty sure it's Kahoot.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, you guys have a great weekend until I see you again. Thank you all for holding down the fort, because I've been on campus and I get to see some of you now that are working essential shifts. So it's bringing a smile to my face. So see you soon.
Bye.
bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Have a good
Bye.
day.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
See ya.
Okay, bye. All right, see you guys. All right, bye, everybody.